I'm Aaron, and I'm with WIBS, Washington, Idaho Bigfoot CERT, and we're here at an undisclosed location in the Selkirk Mountains. But I'm here with a bunch of people who are independent researchers. Will Ulmer with Bigfoot of Stevens County. We got Beans Baxter down from Alaska. And we got Bill Bisson, who's been on this channel before. And then Nathan Bronis and his wife Holly.
So my name's Nathaniel Bronis. I've been involved in field research since right around 2009, where I came into this summer of '09. I had a sighting in the state of Michigan, where I'm from. And essentially I was out scouting for deer on the backside of my property, preparing to learn. I was trying to learn how to deer hunt essentially. And during that process of scouting and finding bedding areas where the deer were congregating in the summer, trying to locate like doe bedding areas and where their fawns are hanging out and where the bachelor groups of bucks are grouping up in the summer. In July, in mid-afternoon, I was out hiking along a transition from our property onto our neighbor's property, who we had permission to hunt around their property. And I was out crossing lines, fence lines right over to their property and going to hook up to an ATV trail that would then contour all this bedding area that the does had been previously hanging out by, near these old rock piles where farmers stacked up all the rocks they'd plow out of the ground. And during that process, I saw a figure coming through like this young aspen, or we would call it poplar over by where we're at, and just a figure looming in there. And I thought it was my neighbor, maybe in a blackout outfit, doing like in a turkey blind that's like blacked out inside. So, because that's what you tell yourself. You see something and you assume it's a person. So
if two disappeared tonight.
still got five.
That means you'll Did you hear that?
Yeah. What'd you hear?
So we just heard a possible knock. Could have been anything.
But you do? You're saying? I love it.
Yeah, you get the woods to yourself.
Sure.
I'm really glad you came out here.
Yeah, sitting here enjoying the fire. In between everything else in life.
What'd you guys hear?
Beans thought he heard like a siren type. Could be nothing, but it sounded like a voice talking, like way off in the distance.
We are headed up this ridge where there is a long-term recorder, audio recorder, and I need to replace the batteries and the SD card. So I have to do this a little less than once a month. And we've gotten a lot of knocks on it, and recently a really good sounding whoop. To test how well it's hitting.
Is it a box or?
It's a camo box, and you can see it from where I'm standing. It's easily in view. And you're looking for it. There's also some wires. So this is just kind of for fun. Because if you guys know it's here and you're looking for it and you can't find it, the odds of somebody just happening across it are pretty low.
There it is, right there.
Yeah, there, okay. Got it.
I'm not going to show it on film, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think.
Oh, I don't really care.
Why does it matter? No one's gonna know
I don't see
where to
anybody.
look for this little tiny thing.
Yeah. And plus they have no idea. I mean, as long as we keep the general area vague, yeah. And that's a big reason not to let it be known, is because if they know there's an audio recorder here, it's a perfect place to come, yeah, we'll make some woots or whatever. Oops.
So you're just servicing it. You're
Yep.
replacing the memory and the batteries.
Yeah, and maybe I'll let Nathan explain how it works, but I will get it out here and show you. So it's in this box that was painted. And inside there's this recorder. That's it, just a standard recorder.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the battery pack that lasts about 40 days.
It's just torquing.
Oh, so you've got the like a lavalier mic kind of thing going up there.
Yes, these are omnidirectional microphones, really high sensitivity. They're designed for wildlife recording. And yeah, I have them custom made by a guy I know. And I actually built that rig right there. But yep, they're just good for monitoring an area, for vocalizations, wood knocks, any kind of behavior you're trying to capture. Just trying to find a good spot for this little guy because I just don't like how torquing that's on the lead. I typically run 128 kilobits per second. You can run 320, but you only half the distance on the card, like how long you can go. As far as all kinds of wildlife, owls, wolves, coyotes, anything. And then if you're lucky enough, maybe Sasquatch vocalizations as well. And this little high point right here is a great place to get acoustic pickup for your omnidirectional mics. Work a little differently than your cardioid or narrow directional microphones. These pick up within 180 degrees of their element facing forward, and it's just really good for getting an ambient static amount of sound. So you can play something three-dimensionally in the way you hear it. Because if you look at a narrow, like the microphones on some of your standard shooting cameras, they're meant to focus sound within a parameter of an area. They're not meant to pick up sound behind you or around you. It's meant to be capturing whatever your subject is. So the microphones are a little different for acoustic wildlife recording than you would use, say, on a YouTube camera or something like that.
The battery was totally dead, so now I'm double checking that the date is right, the time is right, because it's on a timer. That's why it lasts 40 days. It would last maybe 20 days if it were going 24 hours.
Yes, the system is designed to operate that it has a timer record function, so it's powered continuously, but the timer keeps track of whatever time or date you set it for, and then it clicks over. Say if I set it to 8 o'clock, 8 p.m., and then I tell it to shut down recording at, say, 7 a.m., then I'm getting an 11-hour night or a 13-hour night or whatever, and I'm able to capture in that time frame. That way it's not just consuming space, capturing dirt bikes, riding up and down the roads all day long. You might miss stuff, true, but at night, that's going to be the primary time to capture behavior in the absence of humans anyway, so that's why we focus on that.
It's a cool setup, man.
We start converging on the same point. I'm quietly walking. It's just weaving in and out of the trees and coming out, and eventually it clears the sun, and right at about that point, probably 120 feet away, I got to see what was obviously not my neighbor. It was about 120 feet away. I could see what was obviously a very muscular, dark-haired individual, a Sasquatch, very, very plainly not anything else. You could see skin detail on the face and the tops of the fingers. You could see thin hair on the neck, and you could see oil shining as it would turn its head. You could see oil where it was all dirty and oily, reflecting light back on its cheeks, its forehead, all that stuff. You could see calloused kneecaps where there were no hair. It was just chalky white, really dry looking, no hair there, completely missing hair. And you could see all the muscle contour lines, like the tricep. You could see the edge of the bicep, the main load head of the forearm. You could see the top of the shoulder and the delts crowning over each other, casting shadows over each other. The hair had directional flow to it, like you'd see on a German Shepherd, contouring muscle groups. It was pretty amazing to see all this detail. And time just stopped. Like what you perceive to be, a few seconds just feels like ages. Like you're unable to move and you're locked in this pause in time, and essentially we just both are it comes out and looks down at the 2-track, and that's when we locked eyes. It did a double take, looked toward me.
Say that again about why you're keeping the location secret.
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So why keep the location secret? I do feel kind of bad about that because I learned about some good locations from other people's videos, but I had the recorder out at, and I guess I can say it, Bailey Lake, which is really well known from some of Will's videos, and I got all these great howls and whoops and tree knocks, and then I realized it was a bunch of people going out there Bigfooting. And so now, so anything that I got from there, I had to kind of discount or at least put a big question mark over it, because you never know, because it's such a popular spot. So that's why I like to keep this not exactly known where it is, so that it doesn't pollute the data.
And I was staring at it, and we're just staring at each other down. And eventually, what feels like an hour was actually probably 8 to 10 seconds. I have no way of calculating actually how much time it was. It had to have been shorter than what I perceive. In my mind, in the memory. And it eventually gets upset and pulls its head away from looking at me and scrunches up its whole face and exhales, and that's when you could see the muscles flex, because it tensed up when it flexed. It just went like that, and it exhaled. You could tell it let air out. I couldn't really hear it, but I could tell it let air out. And then it dropped what apparently was carrying was a dead fawn, just dropped it on the ground, like rolled it. It was carrying it over its forearm, and it just rolled it off onto the ground, and it looked back up, and then it did this large U-turn back into the brush. And as it hit the brush, it could have gone back the way it came out, and it would have been easier for it, but it chose to go through this brush, and as it went through, it would just grab handfuls of this willow brush, which grows about yay tall, and it would just grab it, rip it up, and throw it, and then smash some of it, fold some over. It was showing me its strength, and that's when the fear, you run cold. You're just shaking. You're locked up. Your heart is pounding so hard that you can hear your heart just pounding in your ears, and your eyes are visibly shaking because your heart is beating so hard.
So there's a very narrow, flat area between this ridge and that ridge. It expands going down towards the creek, and it's filled with springs and muddy areas, so we can now go check that for tracks, because it seems like it would be a good passageway for something going from that drainage to the drainage right over there.
You are not. No, you're not.
Toes, heel.
Where?
Heel.
Oh. Toes, heel?
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing between.
I know. I mean, it's an impression.
Yeah.
It's not. I didn't say it was
Yeah,
good
yeah.
for that, but I mean, you see what I see, right?
Yeah.
There's no well-defined toes in it, but I mean, you can see where there's a impression there. It looks like maybe, digits, and then there's a impression there. It looks like heel, and the toes are deeper than the heel, which is interesting.
Okay. And there's going to be some patches like this, so
Yeah.
plenty of opportunities to see more. Oh, but I hate to screw it up by.
Like put your thermal looking right
Yep.
there.
Like take a stump, angle it off of that stump right there, cutting across my camp and angling back into the timber, so that way I can catch something that's maneuvering around to approach. That's usually how I do a setup when I'm camping. I always try to give the animal the strategic advantage in the environment, so that way you're maximizing your potential odds of it feeling safe enough to come in close. So that's usually what I go with when I'm out in places like this.
But this is where it kind of broadens out, so we might want to fan out a little more, because you see over there about 30 yards, there's another patch.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll head that way. But as long as we keep going down,
There's super fresh elk right there.
yeah. Ooh.
So Will found this over here.
Hold on, there's something here.
Yeah,
That might
I found
be-
that one too.
This might be a moose, but I can't tell. Wherever you walked, I don't want to mess with
I'm
what
like
you're seeing.
right in this line here.
Okay.
So this is not mine.
That's not yours?
That's not mine. I mean, look at this. It's
Yeah.
not mine.
Okay, so that's a boot though for sure. It's got hard lines.
It could be mine from a month and a half ago.
No, that's too fresh.
Okay.
No way. I see a moose walking through right there.
That's why I'm wondering about that.
That's the whoever that is.
Hmm.
It's the same size. Yeah, it's a boot. And that whole experience, even after it diverted into the woods and was gone, I couldn't even move for at least 2 or 3 minutes because I was scared. I was like, if I run, is it going to come back and chase me? Or if I stay here also, is it going to take that as a continued challenge and potentially come and get me? But so you're in a panic and you're frozen, you don't know what to do. It was something else. So I guess that's as short as I can make that event. And ever since then, I went through about a year of completely being mortified about being outside in natural spaces, or couldn't even feed the animals at night. Walking past a sliding glass door at night was too much. Like all the lights had to be on, and you couldn't bring yourself to do anything outside after dark. But after about a year, I started watching documentaries about chimps and gorillas, and I started to hear very similar things to what I witnessed about behavior and actions and of these animals, and it just made it more real and less spooky and monstrous. It made it more of a reality of something living out there just doing its thing, and we were unlucky enough to cross paths.
Ferns are pretty tall up there. There might be some water coming up right there. There's a squirrel.
That's a nice little overhang there, and there's all kinds of little cracks and crevices in there. Could be anything in there. Probably not Bigfoot though. Hey guys, we're gonna take a little break.
We were unlucky enough to cross paths, and with all of that, I ended up eventually just being completely captured with interest about trying to figure out what these things are, what they do, how they do what they do, and live in this wild natural environment and remain completely hidden. And that just led me down a road toward field research, and then I moved out here to the Pacific and slightly inland northwest area, and starting to do a lot of data projects and collecting information. That's how I got into it.
Well, it looks like we could just work our way down through the thicket. But you know, they got to come back up.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, well, that's it. I don't know where they're going. Like, I don't know how far.
We've fallen behind him and separated from our group.
Sounds like they're not very far.
Beans and I are starting to wonder if we're going to survive this.
I'm wondering if the other ones are going to survive this when I find them.
Hello! So after regrouping with the others, Will and I and Beans are traversing back up to the top of the ridge to go get the vehicles, and we agreed to let Aaron and Nathaniel continue to go down and walk the creek back to camp. And so we're on our mission to head back to the vehicle now.
Why do you said it left the deer?
Yeah, it just rolled it off with its forearm.
Why do you think it did that? So it could get away faster, or?
I don't know. It might have been like a situation where it's like a consolation prize. Like I'm fine. You can have it. I've had what I wanted. Or maybe it was a way to distract me if I decided to continue to approach. I have no idea. All I can tell you is that maybe, and there was still meat left on. We went back. When we went back, I brought my parents and I had a rifle with me and all that. My cousin, who told me I was lying the whole time, he actually found footprints in the brush where it ripped up all the willow. And so he had to completely revise calling me a liar. Like, I don't know, something did go through here, but I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot, but something went through here. And he's like looking at all the torn up willow laying around that was thrown like 20, 30 feet. And but the deer was completely stripped of meat. Its organs were gone. The only meat left was on the front shoulders and legs and neck. That was it. The top of the skull was punched in just straight in over the cranium. Like you could push the hide, you could push on the hide and it would be hollow down into the brain case. So, and there was a big laceration that ran from like the right side eyebrow to the back of the ear, a huge laceration. So it's almost like those giant rock piles I'd mentioned earlier. This thing had just been walking through the grass, found this fawn curled up in the grass and saw the rock piles, saw the fawn, and decided to get one and just give it a whap. It's a dead deer, dead fawn. Easy food. And it just left what was left on the body there on the 2-track and left. I don't know if it was trying to just lighten its load or if it just like, fine, you take this, I'm out of here. Don't know.
I'm still pissed.
Don't let this smile fool you. Behind these eyes burns a cold fire. I'm gonna tell you what, son.
I wish I had split personalities.
Just work for 15 years and a gut-wrenching, soul-torturing job, and you'll develop those coping skills that giving me this amazing humor and sense of humor. So we made it to the road, so there's a good chance our bodies will be found. I have no regrets.
Yeah, so I do a lot of research on reports. I go in, I work for a variety of organizations, and I collect all of the report data from seemingly legitimate reports. I reach out to witnesses and do on-site investigations. I like to try to figure out, by looking at all this data as it's dumped out on a map, and trying to come up with methods that can lead to predictability, figuring out where these animals are going to be and what the potential draws are. Why are they going to that valley or hanging out on that ridge or spending time in an area, and where those transition zones are, in the hope that you can in the future be able to look at a place, look at the weather conditions, that year's overall productivity of seasonal calories, whether it be berries or tuberous plants, or maybe an increase in ungulates because of previous logging activity led to higher browse rates, or higher browse availability, and so higher survival rates of ungulates 2 years down the road later. It's pouring out all of that information and trying to figure out why they are going to be there, and then try to be ahead of the curve and know ahead of time where to be and where to have cameras, where to have long-term audio recording systems, and capture evidence of that motion and movement, and maybe even capture good video footage or have an encounter that can be documented. So essentially that's the breadth of it. But there's also smaller things. You have to mesh yourself into a community to get this information. You have to reach out and extend yourself and try to collectively build a group of people that you can work with, that can lend themselves to an organized meeting of the minds that can get something accomplished. Because I'm just one guy, really. So, but I'm doing what I can, collecting that information and plotting it out and trying to follow the trends the same way a biologist would be doing with any other animal, by following the information.
How far did we hike, Beans?
So, using the hiking tracker on my watch, it says we went 2.95 miles today. We actually went a little bit further than that because I didn't turn it on until a little bit ways into the hike. And I am beat, I tell you what. That was a rough hike. Not a lot of flat ground around here. A lot of going up one hill only to see when you get to the top there's another hill to go up.
Want to follow a report, Will?
We're back at camp from a very long uphill hike. We're drinking beer now. End of report. Wait. We beat your ass here.
Yes, yeah.
So,
Well, I know how to accept defeat. We lost.
So tell me about the what you guys found on your way down the creek.
Well, on our way back down, we saw we encountered two big waterfalls that drop off. Had to climb down around all these rocks to get back this way, and then about a halfway back, so probably about I want to say 800 yards from the camp, we just ran into a whole bunch of where bear have just plowed through this marsh and ripped it all up, and then we found two huge pools where one pool had like 20 trout in it, the other one had like 14, but they were all about that long. Beautiful, big, bright red-sided trout, beautiful.
Nice.
White razor-edged fins, it was beautiful, and the green bottom underneath them, beautiful. And then after that, we came out, found an entirely mummified squirrel, just dead in the trail. It looked like a moose stepped on it.
Oh.
We did get some video of that, and then came back out and found that the super fresh mother bear and cub going through the skunk cabbage, just probably even this morning. They were that fresh. We got to the waterfalls and I'm like, well, I guess they win. Because it was beautiful, too beautiful to pass up.
when we're in a group like this, even though our plan was to stick together, we're gonna have to have radios all the time.
Yeah, I was a little confused. If I'd have known what we were going to do, I would have brought my pack with water and the radios.
That's what I was saying before we left. I wanted to get an outline of what the overall goal was, because then nobody was caught up in the middle of it going, what are we actually doing out here?
That's exactly what me and Marshall were doing. We're like, are we coming back this way? Or are we walking back to the camp from the creek? What's going on? And it was just like being in an army again. Nobody knew what was going on.
I like to have a plan roughly of what I'm going to do, and then have a backup plan if I find something that I want to do or change plan, that it's those two options. And if you're in a group setting, you don't always get the option to change your mind, because you're reliant on, those people are reliant on knowing where you are and that you're safe.
Well, I mean, is any experiences that happened to you that was in the Selkirks?
Yeah. So one interesting event that I had happen up in the Selkirk Mountain area was we were camping. We selected this area based on reports, and we decided to go camping there and just test the water and see if there was anything in there based on looking at these reports that were congested around this ridgeway in August. So we decided to camp there in mid to late August. And we pulled into this camp, set everything up right around dark, deliberately making a lot of noise and pushing the envelope, if you will, trying to be disruptive. I was picking up boulders and throwing them at the ground. I was wailing on a tree a couple different times with a large stick, just trying to create some loud wood knocks. And then I did a couple of vocalizations. I think I did like 2 or 3 whoops. And then right after that, one final time, after a lot of silence and nothing going on, I picked up this great big log and I just heaved it against the tree. I picked it up again, I heaved it against the tree. And then about a minute and a half go by. And right at that point where I've given up and I'm like, okay, we gave it a shot, up on the ridge line right above us, way up, probably a good half mile up this ridge, there was a loud whoop type call, and then pause, nothing for about 30-40 seconds, I'd say. And I'm at this point, I'm like, that's interesting. So at this point, I'm going around the vehicle trying to get a better bead on where the sound was coming from, and get away from some of the creek noise. And then another whoop, and this one was a little louder and closer. Whoop! Coming down the ridgeway. And then I was like, oh wow, it's coming this way, whatever it is. And we're sitting there, and another 40, 50 seconds go by, and then a final one, and this time it's totally cleared the ridgeline and actually crossed the road, probably 30 yards from the road that we just turned off of and had set up our camp off of. And we heard it at the bottom down by the creek, and it went, woo! And then that was a interesting event that happened right there at that campsite.
Okay,
So-
to expand, so you've seen Bigfoot twice.
Yeah.
Why are you here?
Why am I here?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like when a kid kind of can have a similar expression that like when they see animals and they become totally enthralled with animals after they've had a really unique wildlife experience. It's kind of the same thing. I was told my whole life that this is the parameters of life. These are the things that are real. These are the things that you put away in your after childhood is over because they are not real. As a young teenager, being confronted with something that you've been told in every single instance is not real. It's a story, it's a myth, it's a fable, it's a joke. It's a cultural propagated idea. Then you watch this cultural propagated idea walk out in front of you in the field, and it just looks at you, and you're looking at it, and it's obviously real. It's there. It's got a shadow. It's holding a dead deer. It's there. And then it turns and walks away, and you're just standing there, unable to move. Like, it flips your whole paradigm. And this just consumed me to the point that I couldn't leave it alone. You become interested in what terrifies you. It's like overcoming a fear, and then that becomes an interest. So from that, it just grew into being fascinated that there is something secretly wandering around in the hills of remote parts of America, completely unknown, undiscovered, and it's there. It really is there, despite no matter how many people come up to you and say, I've hunted this woods for 45 years and I've seen everything out
We were
there.
just talking about that.
Yeah.
If I get so sick of that, because then I look them in the eye and go, how many cougar have you seen in your life? Well, I've seen like 2.
Well,
I've seen,
other
like,
people have seen them.
well, yeah, I've seen like 2 in my life. I'm like, oh, you've seen 2? Would you like to know that there is 1 cat for every 7 by 7 miles? So a box that big. There's 1 cat in that box for the state of Idaho, and in the state of Washington, it's like 1 every 5 by 5 on average if you include the Cascades. And you've seen 2 in your life. Have you ever seen a wolverine? What about a lynx? Any of those? And they always go, oh well. We love to believe we think we know more than we actually know. This was after my sighting, so it would actually have been 2010 and 2011. I think it was 2010, and I was out there trying to get the attention of whatever this thing was. And so I'd tried putting out apples and food, all different kinds of things, bread, you name it. And then I heard about people trying peanut butter, putting peanut butter out in the woods. And so I bought the biggest jar of peanut butter you could buy at Walmart, the Great Value pound-and-a-half jar, huge one. And so I found this really cool secluded spot where I'd found what looked like footprints before. And so I decided I was going to set up and try putting out this peanut butter in a tree. So I put it up in the craw of the cedar at about, I want to say close to 7 feet, probably 6.5 feet. And I just wedged it up between the branches. I'd taken the seal off and put the lid back on, cinched it down pretty tight. But the whole way back and forth out there, when I'd go out there to check on it and see if it was still there, I would sing the whole way in and whistle, and then I would unscrew the lid and then screw it back on, and I'd do that a variety of times. And then after about a week of not seeing it touched, I came back on I think it would have been, it probably 3 days after the very last time. I didn't come back for a short bit. I just left it, and then I came back. I probably at the weekend following, and the jar was completely gone. Didn't find it. There was nothing there whatsoever. And then another week passed, and I just had totally forgotten about it. And then one day on the hike out there where I go back in toward my deer stand, I went back down. So, I'm going to go check and see where I put the peanut butter jar. And I went out there, and the peanut butter jar was sitting there on the ground right by the tree, where it had not been previously at all the week before. And it was completely cleaned empty. And there was a pine cone inside inside the jar with the lid screwed back on. So that was weird. Really interesting.
Yeah, I'm always down, like in the future, to park somewhere and then hike in and then camp somewhere, you know.
That's my style. I love to throw everything in a tower pack, get deep, get in a place where people haven't been. That really pisses them off sometimes, getting in and putting yourself in a location where humans are not normally supposed to be. You're like, hey, this is the designated human location. What are you doing out here? And they can get pissed off and throw a fit, a variety of things like that. The most activity we've ever gotten is when we reestablish camps that have dilapidated, no one's using. So I took a report years ago, and this report, the gentleman, they had a farm when he was young, and they had kinds of weird activity all throughout his young adult life, and then he ended up inheriting the farm, and he continued to raise chickens on his family's farm, and he had and there was a channel, I guess they had catfish in this slow-moving channel off the main river there, and he would always go to try to catch catfish, and he could never really catch any there. I don't know if he just didn't know what he was doing, or there weren't very many or in that area or what, but there were supposed to be some in there. But he raised chickens, and then routinely, his entire life growing up, they'd have chickens go missing. And even when he was a kid, his dad said that the chickens would go missing and then dead animals would show up around the property. He never connected the dots. But after he inherited the farm, the second year that he started running the farm, after his family was too old to really do anything, so he basically took over all responsibilities. He said that the chickens would, it was the second year he was running stuff, that spring, they had encounters with what they thought was a person coming onto the property. And turns out in the long run it wasn't a person, but it was a Sasquatch that had been stealing 3 chickens a night out of the coop, and it would actually open the door, go into the coop, take the chickens, and close the door. And they didn't have any idea what was going on for several weeks until they actually went into the chicken coop. And he said that there were footprints in the mud in the chicken coop. And not only that, at the back porch behind the house, because the chicken coop's like on the side of the house, back porch, they found 3 dead catfish that long just laid out on the porch, on the back porch, just laying there, soaking wet, dead. Not, and they weren't. No one knows where they came from. They didn't get there by themselves. So it was a really interesting story. And he went on to say that he actually got to see 2 different individuals on that property over the next 15 years before they sold the land. And that was also in Michigan. Probably back, I think, in the early 90s. So.
Yeah, it's a great area. It definitely seems like it's great habitat for wildlife.
Didn't really see much of anything.
Can't experience it if you're not here, so.
We ended up splitting up because our cars were parked up on top, so our teams broke apart. They continued down, we went back up, and as we were heading up, you and I both heard what sounded like a possible knock. And then probably about 10 minutes later, Beans heard what sounded like maybe a rock clack. But that's all that really happened up on that area.
Found just a plethora of food, just absolutely loaded with fruiting devil's club. There was still huckleberry, quite prevalent on all the plants. And also found a lot of trout that were held up in the pools at the lower sections of the falls. They're not going to be able to get any further up, so they're just collected there. It'd be super easy to harvest as a food resource. Some of those trout were between 8 inches long and a foot long. Beautiful fish. And we saw plenty of evidence of moose, bear, and loads of deer, and a lot of evidence of squirrels and rodents. So pretty interesting. Looked the whole sandbars over, all the sandbars over for prints, and just no potential Sasquatch tracks. Just the bear and the moose were everywhere, all up and down back in there. So something about August, late August, from like the 15th on till about September 10th, that whole stretch. There's just tons of vocal reports at any above 3,000 feet.
Yeah, the Bigfoot stuff, I very clearly have drawn a line. I care about the Bigfoot information. To be honest with you, from any other exterior perspective, we're all fringe anyway.
I didn't hear super clear because I was talking. We heard some possible tree falls, and I've never heard that many trees fall at once.
Like you were saying, like, why is everyone so guarded about doing things certain ways? It's because they're too afraid of the repercussions socially. I don't care about any of that. That's not why I'm here. I don't care about name tags. Not really. I want the data. I want information.